Welcome to Divorce Source Radio, your free audio source for information related to divorce. I'm Steve Peck. Our program today is titled, The Falsely Accused. In America, a woman is beaten every 12 seconds. 1 out of 4 women will be assaulted by a domestic partner. And male children exposed to domestic violence have a 700% greater chance of beating their female partner later in life. These are the horrible and unacceptable results of domestic violence. In 1994, then-President Bill Clinton signed the Violence Against Women's Act as a means of protecting women. This act was well-intended, but laid the foundation for the creation of a new industry, the false domestic violence injunction revolution. And here's how that works. The mixture of Violence Against Women's Act, combined with no-fault divorce, affords women, and mothers in particular, instant bargaining power, especially in family court. In cases of high-conflict divorce, all a woman need do is to go to the courthouse and file for a protective order stating that she's in fear of her husband. And based on uncorroborated hearsay and without the accused being present, can have the husband removed from his home and children. And if he makes an attempt to contact or see them, he'll be arrested when you've done nothing wrong. The power granted under the Violence Against Women's Act has opened the door for a tactical advantage in nasty divorce cases involving marital assets, visitation rights, child custody cases, and move-away cases. Again, I say, violence against women is wrong, and the only thing worse than this is to be falsely accused of violence against your wife or children when you've done nothing wrong. And this happens more than you might think. My guest today is nationally known forensic trial consultant and expert witness Dean Tong. Dean has appeared on national television and radio programs and is the author of Elusive Innocence. Dean spends his time protecting the falsely accused, and he's here today to help us better understand why someone might falsely accuse another of a crime they didn't commit. And he'll provide tips on how we might protect ourselves from this happening to us. Dean Tong, welcome to Divorce Source Radio.
Steve, thanks for having me today.
Dean, I was on your website and I watched your video, and you mentioned that this career path of helping the falsely accused wasn't one that you chose, but rather it chose you. Tell our listeners what you mean by that.
Yeah, I got involved through firsthand experience, Steve, way back in late 1984 when my then first wife sued me for divorce, and it catapulted into false child sex abuse charges against my 3-year-old daughter. It turned into a very, very vicious custody battle, one that consumed $150,000 over 10 years of litigation and 6 different courts, using 7 different attorneys and going through 7 different psychologists. And I was arrested for molesting her back in 1985 twice. The second time, the court gleaned where there was smoke, there was fire, so I was held without bail, and then granted a $25,000 bail, and couldn't see my daughter or my son for 1 year until the state of Florida dropped charges. After that, I at best got chaperone visitation for 5 years until 1989, and then finally got 8 hours of visitation unsupervised on a Sunday, but I never again got to see them overnight alone. And it was an ordeal that basically goaded me to become an activist, to start writing on this topic. I started publishing in 1992 my first book, Don't Blame Me, Daddy. I ran for politics down here in Florida for State House, and made this basically my calling. And I never would have thought it would have turned into a career, but I have now achieved my master's degree in child forensic studies and psychology and the law. And I've now been hired by parents going through these types of cases and attorneys in 47 states and Canada. And I now also, of course, testify as an expert witness where children are making outcries against men, their fathers.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what it's like to be falsely accused of this. And as I watched your video and read more information on you, I saw how you just threw yourself into this. You researched it, and like you said, it took all of these years, $150,000, to prove that you were innocent. But in the process, it certainly wrecked your life.
Yeah, that's a chapter I like to forget and go on to the next chapter, if you will, that I'm now helping men and women in these cases of parental alienation and where false PPOs and false child sex charges are leveled. But it's rewarding. I boast a fairly successful track record in these cases. My website is abuse-excuse.com. For those who want to visit my work. And I have basically cultivated a list of colleagues across America and Canada, North America, that I believe are just unimpeachable, unassailable. I'm proud to say that I have doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists, medical doctors in cases of alleged shaken baby syndrome that I work with daily that in my professional judgment, are just the foremost in their professions, and I'm honored to be able to work with them.
Well, let's say that one of our listeners has been falsely accused, whether through a PPO, which is a personal protection order, or Child Protective Services has become involved. What's the first thing that our listener would need to do to protect themselves?
Well, the first thing you need to do, Steve, is you need to know not what to do or what not to do. And that is, you don't want to talk to anybody from the government, whether it's DHS, Child Protective Services, whatever it's called in your state, or a police officer without legal counsel present. And that is absolute legal suicide, because you might make an inculpatory statement that can be used against you later in a court of law. So that's an absolute no-no. Do not talk to the cops. Do not talk to any governmental agency personnel, intake workers, social workers, therapists, whomever. Certainly you want to start a timeline, which is a journal of chronology by dates and events, jogging your memory as to the alleged events that you've been accused of, alleged acts you've been accused of perpetrating, whether it's abuse against your wife or your child. Knowing that with VAWA, the Violence Against Women's Act, it's basically by proxy. In other words, if you're cleared of abusing your wife or your significant other, you'll be cleared of potentially abusing your children. There's a direct proximate link there, and you'll be able to see them without any chaperone or monitored supervised visitation sanctions. You want to select an attorney, obviously, if you know you're under criminal investigation, police interference, criminal interference stage, as I call it. But this doesn't mean to open up your yellow pages. This doesn't mean to call your father or your grandfather or your best friend and say, hey, do you know the best family law or the best criminal law attorney in town? Now is the time to really hunker down and do your homework and make sure your attorney is AV or BV rated Martindale-Hubbell, board certified in criminal or family law, has been trying these cases for quite a while, has a record that is basically, untainted, and you can rely on this lawyer, knowing that in the future, if the attorney, can't litigate the case by him or herself, and you need experts, that attorney would work with someone like me as a consultant. That the client has a team of professionals to work on his or her behalf.
Yeah, as you said in your video, when the accusations were leveled against you, you thought, hey, I didn't do it. All I have to do is go to court and tell my side of the story. Then you quickly found out it was much more complicated than just telling the truth. And I guess as you look back now, you can see how naive you were about the process.
That's right, and it's not just that, but guys today, and I, realize that I have fielded 20,000 consultations over the last 25 years and have been retained in hundreds of cases, and still today receive scores of emails and phone calls from prospective clients.